All right. Wanted to start this off right. Don't know how to post that, folks.
Appreciate it.
Streaming. You wrote a book called American Archetype. Yeah. Why'd you write this book? What kind of problems and trends did you see that you were concerned about and wanted to address?
Oh, wow. Dang. I mean, I guess they're personal problems. Personal problems, I just see a lot of people having arguments, useless arguments about things that are not complicated. They're pretty simple. But because people don't stand on principle, I don't know, muddies the water and makes things confusing that shouldn't be confusing. So I just wanted to try my hand at simplifying it. That was my goal. You know,
legit. What kind of principles do you hold that you think are important?
I guess my main important principle is individuality and human autonomy. You know, because that's the foundational principle.
So how do you define what it mean? What does it mean to be an individual?
It means to own your own decision making. It's the opposite of a determinist. Like you are the controller of your decisions. Your decisions is what makes your character and determines your future. And that's the base. That's the premise that, to me, life starts. That's the basic premise. So
the idea of agency, you're like that one person, you get to make those decisions, and the things that are inside your realm of control, that's where you would get to show like who you are.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, absolutely. And I guess the argument is we have to choose something at the foundation.
Yes.
And there's got into a conversation with this dude on the internet, I guess it was Facebook. And, you know, it's like, well, what evidence do you have? What data, what empirical data do you have that individualism is, you know, less than it used to be, or how do we measure this? And I'm saying, like, you don't need empirical evidence for this principle. It's not something that we can find in reality that says, oh, this is right. It's a principle that we adopt. That's why I say it's the first fundamental choice.
Right.
That's where data starts from. Like, you don't gather data before we figure out if we have choice or not. You gather the data after you decide if we don't, or if basically you subconsciously think we don't, or I guess that's the point. Let me see if I can say that a little bit better. Either you think you do have agency, or you consciously think you don't, but you still have to make choices at the end of the day. So you're subconsciously applying your agency.
Right. It's part of the nature of reality, the nature of being human. If you don't have choices, then you can't have this conversation. Like, we cannot be literally having a conversation if we are not making choices. We don't make choices to speak. Because we are making choices to speak, we're not looking for more evidence if we have choices. We have to have those evidences to speak just to even engage in conversation. Yeah. So I think that when people ask for that level of data, then like, you're asking for the data for reality, and we don't more data than just reality itself. Yes, we're going to have to live law of identity. A is A. I can't go prove it to you. You have to accept it. You have to accept that reality is this, and we are having a conversation right now. We are making choices to speak. It's happening. We're accepting that part, not proving that.
Right. Can't prove that part. This is
right. I would need evidence for the evidence. That doesn't make sense. We have to at least accept. There are some inherent truths we have to accept. And if you do not accept that, I can't help you accept it. All I can do is tell you that I have accepted it. You have to accept it if you want to have this, if you want to be rational. I mean, you don't have to be rational. You have the opportunity to do those things.
True indeed, man.
All right. So how does being an individual or authenticity compare with the idea of selfishness?
I mean, so I guess initially, selfishness is not inherently negative. Right. So I don't think that there's a distinction. Well,
I think you're right, though. I don't think there is a distinction. I think the idea of being an individual and being authentic, being selfish, by definition, is the same. If you are something ish, you are like the thing. Ish is like, no,
right.
So if you are being selfish, you should be being authentic. You should be like that. If you're using the word correctly, you should be like yourself. And that makes...
And I guess as you're talking, the interesting thing to me is that really selfishness is positive or negative based upon your character, right? So if you think it's a negative thing, chances are you may have negative characteristics, because what you would deem selfish, being deemed true to yourself, would be being negative towards others, which for me, being selfish for me is not, it's not ever about being negative toward anybody else, So that's that part.
That's huge. So like you got this ethical archetype book and everything you're going through. What is the difference between like ethics and morality?
I mean, this is my personal take on it. I just look at morality as a completely individual understanding of good and bad, whereas ethics is the understanding of good and bad within the collective. I know that's not universal. People don't all categorize it that way, but that's the way that I look at it. Just because and I say it in the book, is like one influences the other, but just because people think a thing is wrong doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to think that thing is wrong. I don't have to be beholden to what everybody else thinks. And if that, and nobody does that, because if they did that, then it would be so detrimental to them as a person that, and people believe they do that, and they may have the negative emotional effects of that type of mentality, but you can't do it full time, because you can't subordinate all of your judgment to the group. It's just not how you can't operate like that. So, I kind of went off the path.
As all knowledge, can't all know everything that from every other person. All we can do is speak from our perspective. And that's what you seem like you've done in this book. From your perspective, morality is with the individual, ethics is with the group.
Yeah.
And that's a cool distinction. So America's ethical archetype is just how the group relates, or how the group all comes together. What do you think? Like, how would you define that title?
It comes from taking a specific look at psychology, which is Jung's take on psychology, and a specific look at philosophy, which is Rand's look at philosophy. And it just looks at the similarities between these two systems of thought and identifies the characteristics that are unique to what Jung would classify as a psychological individual. And so to attain the status of psychological individuals, you have to have independent and exercise independent judgment. And also within the book, I talk a lot about abstract thought, because collective thought is the kind of thought that I was just talking about before, where you kind of like subordinate your judgment to the thoughts and feelings of others, versus independently having your own idea of what a thing is. And so that part is just the ability, because it's a lot that goes in with that, because the whole ability of, let's just say, to think clearly, you have to be able to abstract, because there's just too many things, too many concretes in the world, too many perceptions for you not to categorize these things into thoughts and concepts. And that's the only way you can that's the only way you can limit things to think about them, in an increasing amount of things properly. So that part, so the individual part, the ability to think abstractly so you can simplify with concepts. And in that way, that to me, using those systems of thought helped me to get to one unique mentality that was proper for, American ethics, what I call in the book American Ethics.
Okay. What do you think that unique personality entails? Like, what attributes does it have?
Yeah, so just the ability to think abstractly, the ability to think independently. And to be honest with you, the reason why I say think is because this is why I talk about ethics, because for me, ethics is the only thing that matters. Like, if you take on a decision that doesn't affect me, I'm fine. It could be a bad decision. Doesn't bother me. But if we're going to take on leadership positions within a country of 300 plus million people, you have to think, like, can't use instinct. We can't have a country of 300 million people figuring out what to do based on how we feel today. We can't use feelings. We can't use instinct, because it's inconsistent, right? And it's not just, like, I think you use that word a lot. I like that. It's not a just outlook. You need to use your thinking to lay out some groundwork, some framework, and principle approaches to how we do things. And I kind of whittle down within the book. I take it down from, there's 8 types in Jungian psychology. 4 of them are rational, 4 of them are irrational. I take it down from irrational because I just as leaders, because a lot of this book is about leadership in America. So I take it down from irrational because I just reject the idea that irrational leadership is good. And then I just look at each one of the rational types in kind of like isolation, just split them in kind of into a quadrant, this matrix, and it's basically 2 lines. The X is like collective and independent individual, and the Y is like thinking and feeling. And so I just go through, is feeling the appropriate approach to leadership in the country, is feeling the appropriate approach, is a collective mind appropriate approach, or is the independent mind appropriate approach? And so through all of that, narrowing down, I come down to a specific psychological type that's uniquely connected to and most naturally like what you would need to secure individual independence in America, and from a conceptual standpoint.
Okay. So what are the issues you think with collectivism or following the group?
I mean, it's fake. I mean, I guess that's the easiest way to say it. It's fake.
What problems does it open you up to?
I mean, you being inaccurate can open you up to an immense amount of problems. I mean, because let's just look at it easily to kind of like make it more. Either you're making your decisions yourself consciously, or you're subconsciously making decisions and pretending and projecting your decision making on the object. And the object could be people, it could be group, it could be anything outside of yourself. But when you're I don't know if I could say pretending, because it's so popular is not the word that I'm looking for. It's so common that people don't have a lot of self-awareness. And that's in the book I go through how, we develop from children to adults. And that's kind of the childish approach to things where everything is outside, and what it is that, is that you are believing that, I guess you're imparting your own subconscious interpretations on what you think is clearly external data or something like that, I would say. And then it just comes, it's inaccurate. It's more inaccurate because you know what you know what you think. And then when you think that you know what everyone else knows, then now you've started. That's
making an assumption, right?
Yeah, you're making a lot of assumptions now.
There's no way that can work out for you long term.
Yeah.
I hear you. So what are the benefits what are the benefits of being a moral person? Like why does this matter at all?
I mean, because it's about your life. That's the whole point. I mean, that's, once again, to get back to simplifying. If we just get back to the point that morality is just about it comes back to life. Life is the standard value. I mean, this is a Randian point, and I'll give her the credit. She did the regression analysis, and that's what it starts with. People start from different other places, and I'm saying that is inaccurate. Whenever you start from another premise, well, the people would be better, or the world would be better, or my dog, or my family, or this, you're not taking morality and understanding back to where it all starts. It starts with life, starts with individual life, and you are the person that has to maintain your own individual life, and so that to me is just, I don't know, it simplifies what good and bad is. That's what it does.
Yeah, I like it. It's either life affirming or it's taken away from life. It makes it real clear. Yeah. So when it comes to being an individual and having your own independent thought, like how do you describe like critical thinking? Like by what standard can and should people make decisions?
I mean, from a selfish point of view, but I guess to give more on that, because I think people will take that and make it something that it's not. I think an example might be helpful because it's like, yes, think from your point of view selfishly, but also think, how does it benefit me to rob my neighbor? How does it benefit me to treat someone poorly? And for me, this is a question that I haven't really delved in. I don't think I necessarily all the way got into this in the book. I touched on this. The abstract thinking, because I'm thinking that you look at, or leadership in America should look at laws from the perspective of the individual and the abstract, not a specific individual. Because if you look at a specific individual, you're like, well, this person is gay, they need gay rights. Or this person is this, they need those rights. And then you start gravitating towards certain individuals or whatever. But when you look at the individual in the abstract, then I see you as I see myself. Doesn't mean I'm going to be making decisions for you. It just means that I understand what's bad for you through the eyes of what's bad for me.
Right. There's a principle here. It's not just a one-off case.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying about, when people think selfishly, it's like, well, you can just rob this person and take their money and then you'll be fine. That would be selfish. It's like, but what about when somebody robs you? How does that work?
Yeah. And what if for some reason there wasn't enough people to rob? What are you going to do? How are you going to live?
True.
This is a terrible plan.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I look at it. Individuals in the abstract. I
like it. And it's a cool part where critical thinking can have that life standard of what to do, of how to make those choices, but how you making those choices as an individual can be something that you can broaden out as saying there are principles that work for me. And since everyone by nature is an individual first, I can use these principles how I consider everybody.
I mean, that's how else do we see anything? That's kind of how I think about it. Right. Just think about like flinching, or like if you, sometimes you might see somebody on television get hit and you might it's not that you feel it, but you understand through your own experience, oh, he got hit by a car. Oh, I would hate to be hit by a car. That would hurt me, And so therefore I am experiencing their experience because we are alike in some way. We are humans.
You're that common. Yeah.
So, but you could also do that. You can do that with almost anything though. Mentally, people do this with objects. People do this with cars. People do this with animals. People do it with trees and stuff like that.
You can relate to a lot of things. It's true.
Yeah, but they project human attributes onto non-human things.
Yeah, what they call it, anthropomorphizing, something like that.
Oh, see, I only want to know the word, but yeah.
What you said, they project those human things onto the clearly not human objects.
Yeah.
So how does being objective help with making decisions then?
I mean, it allows you to understand reality, and the best way to assess what to do is to know what is real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're living a real existence. Life is a really real thing. Death is a really real thing, or can be a really real thing. And to make these choices, life-affirming moral choices, like, we need to know what is actually there and what's actually happening so we can make the best decisions that we can. I mean, there's some social stuff going on here. Like, I'm just going to throw a curveball in here. There's some social things that happen within knowing reality. Because if you can get society to cover for you ignoring reality, then that it's social metaphysics, right? You don't have to know the world. You just know the people who know the world. You don't have to manipulate the world. You have to manipulate the people who manipulate the world.
That puts you in that opposition of being a second-hander.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I've heard people call this the fundamental aspect of femininity versus masculinity, or masculinity versus femininity too. Man controls the, and look, I'm not saying this myself. This is what the saying is, because I know I'm not saying I disagree or agree. I'm just saying that this is what I heard. Man, faces the world, or masculinity faces the world, femininity faces the man. I don't know. Man, what is it? Man controls the, something like that. Femininity controls the man who controls the world. Something like that.
There you go. Wear the neck and wear the head. And that's what they tend to say. Women are the neck, men are the head, and they turn them where they want them to go.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I love to get in it at some point in time, man, because I love ideas of masculinity and femininity and what needs to happen with it, but I haven't thought about it enough to really dig in deep on that.
Yeah, it's always an interesting conversation. They definitely, go out and go down a lot of rabbit holes. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, gosh. So how would you incorporate objectivist philosophy into like the framework for this ethical governance? For like, what if America's got an ethical archetype? How could objective philosophy help navigate that, or help Americans navigate these problems we have?
You mean objective philosophy, or you mean objectivism?
Objectivism, sorry.
I mean, so I think objectivism lays a good groundwork. First of all, it is a fully laid out system already. And I think it's a good place to start. And I think it's the best thing that we have, to be honest with you. As far as something that's principled, something that has structure, and something that's gone through at least the regression back to the source, the full regression back to human life is the standard of value.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't know, because to me, I'm like, you got to augment it a little bit, because objectivism is very black and white. This is kind of why I liked writing the book, because to me, objectivism is black and white. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but there are these nuances with people. They do exist. And I think objectivism is more like either think or get out of here, or either be independent or go, and maybe that's me putting extra stuff in it, but, or it's, you need to develop to this point or you're broken. And for me, Jung, his framework, I'm not forced to do that. I can accept people as they are. I could say that, no, we're not going to do that. I could say, I understand where you're coming from as well. But I don't necessarily know that objectivism gives me a lane to say, hey, I understand where you're coming from. Well, for the collectivism piece, it does. And maybe for the feeling versus thinking piece, but not real. I'm not necessarily sure that it does. I think it just talks about the collectivist versus the individualist, and not so much what Jung's framework is about. And when I say thinking versus feeling, I'm talking about, and I know but anybody that might see it, it's like,
there you go.
True versus false, conceptual connections with each other versus good versus bad, which is a subjective criterion of judging what's good and bad. And so you can be collective or individual with either one of those things, but they're totally different frameworks. Like one person is trying to figure out what is true, what is false conceptually. The other person is like, they're kind of starting with what is good and what is bad, and then we'll figure out what to do after we make those decisions, which is, well, as I lay out in the book, to me, a flawed, faulty pathway to making decisions.
I hear you. So it seems like there's one archetype or one kind of approach that tries to see, is this consistent with reality or not? Is it just consistent with what I know or not? Right. And then there's another path of personality that's trying to figure out, how does this relate to me? Is this good for me or bad for me? Do I like this? Do I not like this? Is this valuable to me or not valuable to me? More of a value judgment piece and a objective judgment piece.
Yes. And the only thing I would say is that when you throw it in the quadrant and you say, because when you say like an extroverted feeling type, it's not really good for me. It's good for us or good for them, and when you throw it in the extroversion piece for thinking, could be, well, what do we think? Do we think this is true? You know, I have my thoughts, but what does the collective say? And then I'll go with that. So it's just a little, I guess what some people call a net. You know what I'm saying? So,
right. I mean, that makes a huge difference. Like, I think like Dr. Young really had a lot of focus there on whether or not the piece that you're focusing on was either going to be inherent to yourself or directed outward toward everyone around you or everything around you. And so it's interesting that you can kind of parse that out as you're walking through what Young thinks of how we process information.
Yeah, that was helpful. And I had my own thoughts on Jung's development cycle too, but yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah, I love that part of the book. That's one of my favorite things is how you were breaking down how each type would approach a problem or look at a situation and then make decisions based off of their values that way. It's really hard for me to get out of my own head and see things from another person's perspective when I haven't had their experiences.
I mean, that's true. Yeah. I mean, but that's difficult for all of us, right? It's just, but this is what good tools are for, in my opinion. So to me, when you get young, and these are tools, both systems of thought here are tools. I think that they're great tools. This is why I wanted to write about them together. I think combining them actually shines a lot of light on things. I think it really is a comprehensive look when you bring these tools together. Yes, but they just also, especially young, just helps you understand, like, because you asked, like, I think the first question that you asked me is like, well, what motivated me? And it's what motivated me to write it. And it's just the frustration of seeing people talk past each other over and over and over again. It's like, you have no clue what that person cares about. And you all don't care what each other care about. And so why are we having this discussion? What is this for?
But you were able to see that. You're like, we could facilitate a much more empathetic understanding of one another, have context for this conversation. You don't have to talk about each other anymore. And that's a trend you saw occurring over and over to where you were like, this could be done differently. Let's help.
Oh, I mean, of course. Yeah, man. It's because it's frustrating to me. It's super frustrating to me. And
them too. They don't even know why they're having this problem.
This is true. And I don't know that my answer is going to make them that much happier. You know, the conclusion that I come to in the book. But the other thing I was trying to combat was just the angst that some people have. It's the Howard Reardon, it's the Hank Reardon angst that I was trying to speak to. It's like, stop having this angst. You know, you have principles that you adhere to. Apply those principles, move on. That's kind of combining another piece in there, but
that's a cool trend to be able to notice, identify, label, and then effectively come up with a solution for, because that's not something that everybody, I think, picks up on. So it was cool to be able to have that idea and then be able to see you work that out and walk that out in a way that was, just evident throughout the writing. It's just, these are the tools. It's cool to do it through Young's way. It's cool to see what benefits that Rand brings in so that there are ways to navigate our more ethical behavior.
I think so. Here's the thing, though, Josh. I can advocate ethical behavior. True. But this is top down. This is, and I mean, I don't want to, muddy the point, or I want to be very clear about this is top down. This is leadership down. And this is, when I'm talking about ethical archetype, I'm talking about what kind of character, what kind of principles should a leader have? And ethical behavior from all is something that we just not going to be able to guarantee that. That's not something that's going to happen. But the point of it is a position from a leadership position, advocating for people to apply a principled stance. That's just the point. Stand on business and apply your principled stance. And people might not be happy, but it is what it is.
And so how can the leaders promote individual autonomy more effectively? Like, what kind of rewards and demands can they set up to effectively encourage things in the system? Well, what would you like to see them do, I guess?
I mean, it's a word that I'm trying to think about. It's called hair splitting. It's like,
Okay.
it's, man, I need another word to apply it to. I just want bold, iron fist judgment. I want someone who is clear. I try to advocate for clear understanding. And I think, let me take a step back. Let me give a quick story. So, you know, when I went to Ocon in like 2023 in Miami. And I was talking, you know, I'm just talking to all different people. And sat down and talked to this young woman. I think she's from Ohio, whatever, Detroit, Michigan, something like that. And I was explaining to her the book, because the book was in the early stages. It wasn't even what it is now back then. And I was just saying that, you know, I'm not really saying anything new in this book. I'm just applying these two systems of thought to bring some clarity. And she was just saying like, oh, but that's what some people need. You know, like if you may not be saying anything new, but the way that you say it may help people understand. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that I think if you were to give people a clear definition and understanding of how to stand on principles and what principles to stand on, it would clear up and help relieve some of the angst, some of that indecisiveness that they have, because they're like, are my principles truly right? Are they really real? You know, are they mystical? Or is it just something that I believe because I was raised to believe this thing? Is it, I want to clear up all of that so they can say, nah, we're pushing the button. Boom. You know, this, you transgress these boundaries. These are the principles that we operate on. I am going to execute, and I'm going to go home and go to sleep because I am sound with my decision making. I'm good with what I've done here, you know? And I think if you do that, if you clearly present people with an understanding that they can say, okay, I get that. I see how that works. I see how that applies. Then some of the things that they were having trepidation over will resolve themselves and will result in better leadership from the beginning, just by having a full understanding of principles.
I love that. You just have the leaders actively have the right principles, demonstrate the right principles, and model that kind of behavior. That's why it works from the top down, that this is the way it works. This is the way we're doing. This is what we're doing. And as you align with that, you have more and more people able to prosper just like the leaders are prospering, work in the system that the leaders are making, and then get the same results that the leaders are getting. That's a cool way to point people in the right direction.
I mean, I hope so, man. I don't want it to be. So here's the thing, right? I think this is a force. This is what part of it is why, to me, it's kind of America's ethical archetype. This is not for everybody. Political public leadership, good political public leadership is not for everybody.
Because of what kind of demands does it place on you?
Because, well, I don't know if I would say the demands that it places on you. I guess.
What do we want out of our leaders?
I mean,
what do you want out of our leaders? What do you think would be a good standard to have?
So I'm thinking about this, right? And I'm not going in that direction. I'm really thinking about economic or business leaders versus political government leaders. And I'm not saying that you have to forego success in business for this type of leadership, but it's a completely different mindset, in my opinion, right? And I lay that out in the book, and I think I probably laid it out better than I can explain it right now, but I could try. It's just that I kind of do this contrast between what I call a macro-minded and a micro-minded person, or micro-minded leadership, right? Mm-hmm. To me, micro-minded to me is like the leader of a family or the leader of a company. And it's like, yeah, we're in a culture, we're in a society, but we are here to take care of us. Micro-minded is like gang mentality or tribe mentality, those things like that. And to me, proper leadership in America can't be beholden to any tribes. That's my point. You know, so it's like, and I make this analogy, I'm saying like the micro-minded type is the type of person who would seek to get more pieces of the pie for the people that they care about and identify with, whereas the macro-minded type is more apt to increase the size of the pie for all, right? And that's, to me, these are, I don't want to say that they're contradictory mentalities, but they can be.
Right, they can be opposed.
Yeah, and I think you have to understand it. I mean, I think it's almost too technical to even lay it out right here, because it's just like I go through the whole idea of, businessmen-minded people, do they think in abstract? I don't know. I'm not, I mean, the greatest business-minded people, I think this is something that I just have to have. Somebody would have to catch in the book, because I go through it more, but I just think that it's more of a principled leadership. It's more of let me just say this one point. I think that great business leaders that I've seen always try to see things from other people's points of views. Like they're always trying to understand the other person's ideas, or adapt themselves to whatever circumstance, or adapt themselves to whatever thing. And proper leadership in America, if you are for individuals, that's not what you're doing. You're not adapting to the new thing. You're not adapting to people's tastes. You're not doing the populist approach. You're saying, no, individuality and human autonomy is the thing that we're doing. That's the principle. That's it. But wait, some people have a communist approach. How do you feel about that? I don't. This is what we're doing. And so that's a long-winded way to just say that I think that these mentalities are kind of different.
That's fair. Yeah. Definitely very different, and have their limits, and everything has their pros and cons. Everything has trade-offs, and it's helpful to find something that is appropriate for what you're doing and how it's actually getting to where you want to go. But in America, I think where we want to go is having more ethical behavior, people living by a principle that defends individual rights that can be applied to all individuals, and have those individuals work together to reach collective goals. Because I want to find as many people as we can to maximize their strengths. We can bring these strengths together to overcome these obstacles, because there's no reason to try to do every single thing and every single job ourselves individually.
No, but I just want you to be able to make the choices for your life. That's kind of just my thing. Like I don't know what you're going to do with it. I do know that you have to survive. I do know that I do know that something has to happen for you to maintain your life. I do know that you have to eat. And so either you're going to think and devise plans and ways to, operate within society that, use resources, allocate resources to create more than what we started with, or to provide value to others. Or you might just be a person who tries to take, and just, that's the way you want to survive. But I guess I just never want to start from the position of, that's why I'm not saying I don't know if I would say that this is advocating ethical behavior. I mean, I guess I do want to advocate ethical behavior, of course, but I just don't. I think ethical behavior is a byproduct of having a moral premise. I don't think that it's like, hey, look at these things that we've studied and figured out that this is ethical behaviors. I think it starts from that, hey, what is morality? Morality is the, life-preserving thing. Oh, how do you do that? Oh, you have to think independently for self, or, have the ability to determine your own future. Okay, well, I'll just take this morality and apply it to ethics, and then just use that as a principle. Like, I don't really need any justification for that. That's my mentality,
Yeah. This is the principle. It works for people. I'm a person. You're a person. Therefore, it works for both of us. All right. Let us work.
Right. Exactly. So that's where I go, because I feel like a lot of people fall into the trap of, even if it's for good, well, this will help everybody do X, Y, Z. And to me, it's not a flaw, but that to me is the business mentality. Oh, what is the empirical evidence? What is the data? How can we get the collective to, and I'm not saying like a collectivism, I'm just saying, how can we get the group? How does this fix the group? How does this do this, that, and the other? That's good. That's a good thing. That's not necessarily what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about good ethical leadership. It's not about, because then you start going into the other thing. That's what I mean. The other is AKA the group.
Collectivism. I believe it. Yeah, I think that's key. It's a smart thing. It's a cool approach, and it's great to be able to walk these concepts out in a real way throughout the book. That's really key.
Man, that was the goal.
Okay. This is an interesting question. I want to bring it back because I wanted to kind of get your thoughts about it again. Like,
Okay.
how would you define the relationship between consciousness or awareness and moral authority? I don't know if you needed to define moral authority, so I understand this question better. But it was just like there's something here. I wanted to get that idea of why are these things important, and what is the relationship between awareness and then this moral authority. In my mind, one led to the other, but I don't know. That was where I kind of started mind blanking.
I mean, I think that's kind of right? I mean, so if we accept, because I think we had to do an acceptance here. If we accept that what's moral is life affirming and life extending and life giving, right? And we accept that what's moral is, it's almost it's only related to choice. Morality is only related to choice.
Right.
So if we accept that consciousness is the only way that you can make choice, and so that establishes the moral part.
Okay.
In my mind.
That's like the consciousness is the precondition to having a moral portion and moral authority. I mean, you have to be aware of what morality is and then what authority it gives you.
Yeah. I mean, yes, but I think we still got a couple more steps to go for the authority piece. But yes, I think you're right. If morality is about the way you use your judgment, then you're going to need consciousness, and these things are intrinsically linked. Like that. Actually, maybe if I say it like this: is there any morality without consciousness? No. So there we go. But the authority piece is taking one thing leading to the other. So I'm agreeing with you. Taking that from the infantile state and progressing it through your life, which I would call moral authority, your morality, whatever. But then to me, I guess when I'm saying the moral authority, I'm saying that, okay, progress that, take that same thing and take it up to ethics and apply it there. That's what I'm saying. Like, this thing does not change, but I understand it, and I'm trying to help you understand it. But this is not a debate. This is not something that we're going to question here. You know, you could say, but no, I want to be a collectivist. I want to be a socialist. That's great. They have countries for that. You should go there.
It's not what we do in America. But yes, there are people like that. You're right.
Yes. So just to take that stance and to not be bashful about it, not to have any angst, that's the word of the day, I guess, any angst about applying these principles, and stop questioning it. And I guess I'm going to throw an extra, this is like almost not related, but kind of related. And this is a little bit why I talk about religion in the book, kind of a little bit. Because one of the knocks people have about religion is that, well, there's no empirical evidence for this stuff. Guess what? There's no empirical evidence to prove we should have human autonomy. There's nothing that's telling us this. This is something that we choose. And if you want evidence on this, I think we said this earlier, it's like a robot trying to ask, how does humanity work? You're a robot. You don't understand where it starts from. This is the whole point, So I didn't want to muddy the water with that, but that's just, I think just people think like, what is the proof of this? How does he know? How does anybody know? We don't need to know. We're adopting judgment as the basis. This is it.
But the more we use a thing, the more evidence we will have that, oh, this is how this thing works, and this thing does work. If you're like, how could we know? We use it. We try. We have to go get the evidence. You don't have to start with all the knowledge. You do have to start, and you will gain knowledge.
I mean, okay, I guess for just in trying to have a good conversation. We're not even having a bad conversation, but to kind of like poke that a little bit. You say, well, how do we know? But to me, knowledge is all about life, right? And so if we don't know what we're trying to know something about, then we definitely can't know, because we don't know what we're trying to know about. that's my problem with it. You know?
Right. We definitely don't have awareness of everything. All we have is awareness of a need or a problem or whatever's right in front of us. And we can use the evidence we have, meaning the information we do know about, to keep moving in a certain direction to find out about the things we don't know about. But there are multiple things that we don't even know we don't know yet. And so I cannot be referring to those things because I don't know what they are. But I could only refer to the things like, hey, we have the opportunity to make a new choice and make a decision that's going to help. Like, I have a current problem. I can take the next step toward solving that current problem by finding out more about it.
But see, what I'm saying, Josh, is that what is a problem if we're not talking about a life? What is a problem if it's not related to a life? Like, the problem of what? Does my TV screen have a problem? Does it need to be fixed? And if it has a problem, whose problem is it? Is it the screen's problem? Because I don't think screens have problems. You know, I may have a problem with the screen. So, but that's what I mean about people's. And I'm trying to use this as an example of how easily we could just project out things having issues. No, it's our issue with the thing that's having an issue. That's what it is. Either our issue or the group's issue or something like that. Or whatever you identify with, I guess, which is subconsciously you at the end of the day.
Yeah. We are the individual, or I am the individual with the problem that is looking to find that solution.
Yeah. I thought that was important.
Nice. Legit.
Cool.